I'm Nisha DeGaring.
And I'm Doug Jessup. Family Heritage Stories exist to give you ideas and examples of stories from the past to help shape the future.
It could be anything like a recipe from Grandma or a vacation location where your ancestors came from. These stories deserve to be passed down. Welcome to Family Heritage Stories, where we talk about what makes us who we are. Things like traditions, values, and culture.
How are these things passed down from generation to generation? Through deeds, through words, through stories. We all benefit from heroes among us. Now, they're going to say, it's just part of the job. But it's more than that. It's time for Hero Salute Stories. With me today, Tiffany Berg. Tiffany, thanks for coming on today.
Thanks for having me.
You bet. Now, you and I met at I don't know if weird's the right way to place it, but a unique place, okay? And so you remember what I'm talking about?
I do.
Okay, you want to fill people in?
Well, I have been a chaplain for over a decade, and we were honoring people in the community that have done incredible things, and you were one of those people. So you were given an honorary chaplain certification.
Yes, Chaplain Jessup.
Yes.
Okay. Or Chaplain Doug. I'm not sure what. I'm going to figure out what the word is. So tell me, what is a chaplain?
People often think chaplain is military or it's a religion, and a chaplain, especially in hospice, is really a facilitator of sacred stories. A chaplain is that facilitator of end-of-life conversations and closure. So that's where chaplains do some of their best work.
You know, inquiring minds want to know, there's got to be a reason why people pick to do what they do. Mm-hmm. So what was the pathway for you to become a chaplain?
Well, it's not something when I was a little girl I thought, I want to help people when they're dying. That was never an idea. But as I got older and my late husband passed of cancer, I realized as much as I knew about life, I didn't know enough about death and grief. And we had 5 children that were also grieving. And going back to school gave me this education that brought far more depth to my life. And so chaplaincies allowed me to see life differently and have very different conversations with people about their stories.
Mm-hmm. Well, I noticed that, talking about stories, you actually did a little kids book.
I did. In that experience where my late husband was going through cancer, I realized that kids don't have the vocabulary to articulate upset feelings. They don't know how to talk about sadness or anger or loneliness. And so this book, If Cancer Was a Fish, I'd Throw It Back, is a way for kids to talk about tough feelings. And surprisingly, a lot of adults have enjoyed it too, because not all of us understand how do we process just upset feelings. How do we move through that in a healthy way?
How do you want to leave your mark?
I'd like to leave a mark on this world of encouragement in people's stories. Just last night I received a message from someone who was wondering why they were here in life, why things were so hard. And in that moment, overnight and this morning, I was able to have this conversation with this person and really encourage them to stay, to be here. And so I think if there was a mark that I would want to leave, it would be that I'm in the lake with people in their personal stories, that I care to be in the lake with them as they're in the harder chapters of their story.
Thank you for joining us for this special episode of Family Heritage Stories. If you would like to help us continue with this great and important programming, please visit herosalutestories.org.
Tattoo, tattoo. Lights out in 5 minutes. Stand by for the evening prayer.
Good evening, Rough Riders. May what we observe at night illuminate our day. In those moments of fear, may you ground us in peace.
I love being in the chaplain corps. It's a passion for me to see sailors grow in their faith and in their own personal lives and see their families thrive as well. The average age is 18 to 24. Even if they don't have a religious background, how do I provide for the entire crew? How do I care for everybody? Typically on board the ship, there are 3 chaplains. We do what is called a religious needs assessment. That religious needs assessment goes out to the entire crew. We'll provide for our own faith traditions, and then we facilitate for other faith traditions. So, for instance, we know we have a Catholic community. We know we have a small Buddhist population. We know we have a small Muslim population. And then if we need to train lay leaders to do those services, then we can do that. One of the surprising things may be the fact that we deploy. So wherever sailors go, wherever Marines go, wherever coasties go, chaplains are going with them. We do community relations projects. So for example, if we're going to Bahrain, we will coordinate with the 5th Fleet Chaplains Office, and they will tell us we would like 15 sailors to come. We also provide counseling, whether they're struggling with marriage, whether it's stress management, whether it's anger management, grief management, and how they can better interact with other people, how they can grow in their workspace or in their own personal life. We have an opportunity to plant shade trees that we'll never sit under. So to see that happen is beyond rewarding.
There's a special bond between grandparents and grandkids.
Tell me a story about your grandma or grandpa.
So, Dr. Williams, this is one of my favorite questions to ask everybody. There's a special bond between a grandparent and a grandchild. So you get to pick, but tell me a story about one of your grandmas.
So I remember as a kid, being probably 8 or 9, and there were a couple years when my parents left on a business trip. And so we'd go stay with our grandparents, right? Sometimes it would be staying at their house. Sometimes they would come to our house. And usually we'd split, right? Half the week with my mom's parents, half the week with my dad's parents. And I remember my dad's parents, we would go there and she would teach us to play the piano, teach us some songs. They'd take us to their favorite pizza place downtown in Salt Lake. And then I remember one time being there and I was eating something and a silver filling came out of one of my baby teeth, right? And I was like 8 or 9. I remember just having this sunken feeling in my stomach, like this is not gonna be good. When my mom gets home, something's gonna be done about this and I'm not gonna like it, right? And turns out I went to the dentist and he had this new dentist working for him, this little lady, and my visual of this is she was standing on my chest pulling my tooth out, right? So now that I've been in the other shoes, I appreciate that much more, but I will say it made me the best flosser of any of my friends because from the time I was 8 till I was probably 20, I flossed almost every day, and I don't think any of my friends did, you know? So I actually thank her for that.
Wow. Do you still eat pizza?
I still eat pizza.
Okay.
Love pizza, yes, yes.
So maybe this is why your mom said to become a dentist.
It just led up to it, you know? Sometimes things just fall into place.
Okay, so that's grandma. Tell me a story about grandpa.
So my grandpa used to play golf a lot with my grandpa. And I remember going to his house. He would move every few years, right? He just loved to move. Loved to build a new house, move to a new house. He loved cars, and he loved golfing. And so I remember going out and playing golf with him, and that's kind of where you would get the life lessons and the advice and you know, the things to do and the things not to do. That's where I learned that there's a such thing as a 5-some in golf. I thought 4-some was the max, you know. But I remember a couple times being like, how do we have 5 or more players in this, you know, going out together? But just depends on how many cousins or friends are coming along with you. And, you know, that was always a good time because that helped me develop enjoyment with golf and something I've been able to do with my son, my dad, and keep that alive.
Gotta love traditions.
Yes. Absolutely.
You're watching Family Heritage Stories with me and my grandpa. We'll be right back.
Every veteran has a story that deserves to be remembered. At Family Heritage Stories, we collect, preserve, and share those personal experiences of our veterans. Your donations help us document and honor those veterans and their legacies for generations to come. Join us in ensuring that their legacies live on. Donate today at herosalutestories.org.
Ron Coleman, what's the difference between broccoli and a booger? Kids won't eat broccoli.
You're watching Family Heritage Stories with me and my grandpa. We'll be right back.
Where's Tommy?
I thought he was with you.
No.
Jack.
Tommy?
Go get him.
Don't stop. Keep playing. Here we go. Here's the fun part.
Did you do this?
Great job.
Encouragement. Pass it on. A message from the Foundation for a Better Life.
Coming up a little bit later in the show, we find out the story behind one of those treasures remembered here at Anthony's Fine Art and Antiques.
My experience of being interviewed by Doug is one of friendship. Doug puts you at ease. He asks questions that probes your thinking and makes you want to come up with and tell the stories that you have heard all your life or has personally happened to you. So there's different angles that Doug can take, and he's really good at it. He puts you at ease, and it's just like you're talking to a friend. So it's actually a very good experience.
Everyone has a story. Stories have power. They help us understand each other.
If you want help saving your family heritage stories with a private interview, contact Krista at fedorafoundation.org for pricing and availability. What does heritage mean to you?
It means a lot to me. And the thing is, though, when I was growing up, I came across some anti-Semitism from other children. And so it made me kind of not ashamed of being Jewish, but I was more aware of that part of me. And I couldn't understand why people were so anti-Semitic. Like, honestly, I'm not doing anything to you. I'm not saying anything negative to you. Why are you being negative to me? I want to learn more about that side. And I know it's really challenging sometimes to find documentation. I know my family going back through New York, coming from Lithuania and just Eastern Europe in general. It means a lot to me. And I just wish people would be more understanding and more tolerant of other cultures. And especially what was going on right now in Gaza. It's really tragic and it makes me very, very, very sad. And sometimes I kind of have to kind of hide that side because I'm so afraid of like somebody saying something negative to me or even attacking me. Like, honestly, that's my biggest fear right now. Honestly, yeah. Yeah. I don't know about you, but for me, it kind of makes me very fearful.
Hi, I'm Krista Numbers. This evening on our Utah Success Stories, we are joined by Manuel Romero. Manuel, you have had such a robust career in military service, education, community service, and now to add to that, you have written this book, Me America, which is what we're going to talk about in this interview. Thanks for joining us.
Thank you for having me.
Can you tell us a little bit about the inspiration behind this book and what the readers can learn from reading it?
Krista, what you'll find is our story is long, it is complex, controversial, and inspiring. You'll find that the stories in this have not really been told in the history books or even in Hollywood.
And we're talking about 450 years worth of history in this book. Is that correct?
That's correct. Yes, I was able to do this research, and thanks to the LDS Family Research Center, documents from the Spanish government and from the Catholic Church, they're becoming more available. So we're able to look at this history that has not been told. So there's a few reasons why it has not been told, and that's only one of them. But I first became inspired, or at least thinking about this, when the television series Roots came out on ABC over 40 years ago, Alex Haley's Roots, and I watched this, and I knew we too had a story to tell. And that kind of really got me thinking, but it was not until I went to college when Chicano studies, Mexican-American studies began to be introduced into the college curriculum, and our history began to be taught. Did I learn more and more about our family, our ancestors, just not only how far back, but how interesting it is. The story was the research that as I kept going, I became more frustrated thinking, why hasn't this been told before? But at the same time, I became more inspired and continued to research and continued to write. And this is the finished product.
And that's what you mean when you say this isn't the story that you hear in Hollywood or in the textbooks in the classroom, which you've taught over the years, correct?
Correct.
This story is so much deeper than that. Can you share with us just a glimpse of one of your favorite stories in this book?
Sure. One of my favorite stories is my mother's fifth grandfather. His name was Roque Madrid. His grandfather was one of the first people to come in 1600 into New Mexico and help settle that.
Wow.
And this Roque Madrid, he was a sergeant major in the Spanish Army, came in 1692 into New Mexico, and as it turns out, he was a diplomat. He spoke several languages. He did a lot of treaties with the Indians, with the Pueblo Indians, the Navajos. He was, you might say, our Davy Crockett.
What an amazing story to tell. And this book, I know, is filled with so many amazing stories just like that. Now, obviously, we don't all have the same family history or the same stories to tell, but we all have a story. So what makes this book and your story relatable to anybody who reads it?
Well, American history it's neither black or white, but it's dozens of shades of gray. So this is just one of those stories, and America is made up of such diversity, and what really brings us together are our shared stories.
I love that. It's so true. Now, when I was reading through the book, there was a part that jumped out at me, and I'm going to ask you to read that if you would, to share that, just to get a glimpse of the way the book is written and what we can expect.
Absolutely.
So I've underlined a passage here, if you wouldn't mind.
I hope this book will leave its readers with a better understanding of who we are. For too long, our history has been ignored by historians and politicians. So much has been left on the table, not because no one wanted to consume it, but because so few had written about it. As we discover more about our ancestors and our history, we find so much to be proud of and thankful for.
Thank you, Manuel. Thank you for sharing your story. With an episode of The Success Stories, I'm Krista Numbers, and I am inviting you to purchase this book and read it for yourself. You can find it on Amazon. You can also find it on your website,
beamerica2020.com,
where I know that you can learn so much more about Manuel and the great stories that he has to tell.
Iepazīstieties ar Jāni Ozoliņu un viņa ģimeni. Viņi ir nolēmuši pavadīt nedēļu ilgas brīvdienas nevis Latvijā, bet gan Lietuvā. Pagaidiet, tā taču nav augstā zupa. Tā ir šaltibaršķai. Tomēr zināmā mērā tā ir tāda pati kā augstā zupa. Tomēr citāda. Ļaujiet paskaidrot, ko es ar to domāju. Jūsu valsts galvaspilsētā Rīgā ir vairāk iedzīvotāji, taču mūsu galvaspilsētā Viļņā atrodas bohēmistu dibināta Užupes republika. Jums ir Turaidas pils, kas atrodas kalna galā. Mums ir Traķu pils, kas atrodas ezera vidū. Jums ir Gūtmaņa ala, lai dotos pazemē, bet mēs būvējam savas takas augstu kokos. Lai arī jūsu ķemeru tīreļa taka ir bezgalīgi gara, tomēr ejot pa augštumalas taku, šķiet, ka tā aizvedīs līdz pasaules malai. Jums ir daudz viegli pieejamu pludmaļu. Savukārt mums ir vieta, ko dēvē par kuršu kāpu. Un, lai tai piekļūtu, ir jāpieliek zināms pūles. Tomēr šī vieta ir to vērta. Vai jums patika ceļojums? Saņemiet balvu! Apmeklējiet Lietuvu. Tā ir ļoti līdzīga Latvijai, tomēr citāda.
You learn a lot about traditions, values, and culture when you travel. Objects with stories are treasures remembered.
With me today, Dr. Micah Christensen from Anthony's Fine Art. So, Micah, you know, there's objects, and we've told a lot of stories, but then there are objects that actually change history, and apparently this one is quite that story.
This is one of them. This is a watercolor, it also has gouache in it, painting of southern Utah. It was done by an artist who has the greatest name ever. His name is Henry Adolphus Lavender Colmer.
Wow.
Almost everybody just called him Hal or HLA Colmer. And that's what it's signed here in the bottom left. It's a painting of southern Utah that he was making as a result of a survey that he did. So you got to imagine Utah at the turn of the century. This was painted about 1903. Southern Utah is largely unexplored. And he's sent by the Commercial Club of Utah, which becomes the Chamber of Commerce, to go explore southern Utah.
Okay.
He takes a surveying kit, which is, by the way, how he made his money as a geologist and a surveyor. If you're a painter in the West, in the turn of the century, there aren't many art galleries here.
Right.
And he comes back, paints this painting, submits it to the third ever contest of Utah art, wins the top prize, and from there, it has the honor of being sent to the St. Louis World's Fair.
Oh.
At the St. Louis World's Fair, where it represents the state of Utah, the editors of a magazine you may have heard of, National Geographic, approach him.
Yeah, I've heard that one.
And they say, we want to hear more about southern Utah. Can you gather more information? He goes on another expedition, and he and his sponsor for the expedition write an article for National Geographic. It appears in 1907. And at the end of the article, they make an impassioned plea for a national park to be established in southern Utah.
So this is one of those national parks.
This is in Canyonlands. And as a result of this article and of his lobbying and this painting, which led to that lobbying in that article, we have Canyonlands National Park and Zions National Park.
Wow. Objects with stories are treasures remembered. Everyone has a story.
And sometimes those stories are told through music.
Krinta byra kibirkštėlės, krinta byra kibirkštėlės, krinta byra kibirkštėlės, man sirakatai ašarėlės. Eisiu geriau paklausyti, eisiu geriau nepaklausyti, ar kukuoja gegutėlė, ar kukuoja gegutėlė, ar kukuoja gegutėlė, ar raminasi ratėlę. Sunku sodui be karvelio, sunku sodui be karvelio, man sirakatai be tėvelio, sunku giriai.
Everyone has a story. Stories have power. They help us understand each other.
If you want help saving your family heritage stories with a private interview, contact Krista at fedorafoundation.org for pricing and availability. It's our honor to be able to help people remember where they came from.
The Fedora Foundation supports the collection, preservation, and distribution of diverse stories of traditions, values, and culture through Family Heritage Stories on TV and online at familyheritagestories.org.
How do you want to be remembered? With another episode of Family Heritage Stories, I'm Nisha Dagiri.
And I'm Doug Jessup.
Krinta byra kibirkštėlės, krinta byra kibirkštėlės, krinta byra kibirkštėlės, man sirakatai ašarėlės. Eisiu geriau